Bureau of Meteorology in the Hazard Preparedness Response section, and I'm joined today with Carleen York from the SES and Steve Pearce from Surf Lifesaving New South Wales. So I'll just talk you through a weather event that's unfolding in New South Wales and southeast Queensland right now. It's quite a dangerous rainfall event and wind generating, wave generating event. So over the last few days we've been watching this trough develop out in the Tasman, and it's produced some very intense rainfall. Some sites on the Northern Rivers district have seen around about 400 millimetres in just the last couple of days, and there's more rain to come. This event is unfolding, and we're urging residents just to keep in touch with what the forecast and warnings are doing. They're being updated regularly, and please stay away from stormwater drains, don't drive through floodwaters. So as mentioned, this low pressure trough, it's generating quite a bit of rain. That rain's intense enough to cause riverine flooding, but also overland flash flooding away from the main rivers. We do have a flood watch current for all catchments between the Queensland border, and there's some north of the Queensland border as well, but just focusing on New South Wales, all catchments between the Queensland border and the Gloucester. So that includes the Gloucester, the Manning, the Hastings, the Macleay, the Nambucca, the Coffs Coast, the Orara, the Richmond and the Clarence. And we do know that the rainfall from this system over the last few days has produced some quite significant overland flash flooding as well. The system's also bringing with it some strong winds, some gale force in fact along the coast. The highest we've seen so far has been up around Cape Byron, I think around about 104 kilometre per hour gusts this morning. So those winds are increasing, and those winds are certainly strong enough to bring down trees and power lines. With the wind comes the waves, and we've seen some large waves being whipped up by this system, and those are coming into the coast now and expecting to persist through today. Starting firstly up in the Northern Rivers district, but progressing down the coast as well. Those waves coinciding with large tides, were our largest tides for this part of the year as we approach the summer solstice. So the combination of the waves and these really high tides means that we're seeing some quite significant beach erosion at the moment up near the Queensland border. And the expectation is that we could see some more further down the coast, down towards the mid-north coast as well as the Northern Rivers. So the water levels are high, and I guess the other thing to note is with those high water levels due to the waves and the tides, we do see some inundation of seawater in some low-lying areas that wouldn't normally see it. So just to summarise, quite a deep low pressure system sitting off the southeast Queensland coast at the moment, bringing with it some very heavy rainfall to New South Wales, quite widespread. Also some strong winds, some large waves, some big tides. Dangerous conditions to be out and about, and expected to persist through today. Tomorrow, it does look at some point during tomorrow, conditions will ease, probably not in the morning. Expectation at the moment is later in the day, but certainly tomorrow morning we'd be expecting some increased rain, wind and waves. The surf does look like it'll hang around for a bit longer though, so I'll let Steve talk a bit more about the surf and those hazardous conditions related to that. At this point I'll hand over to Carleen to talk more around some of the flood impacts.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks very much. So this weather event has led to a high demand in requests for assistance from the New South Wales SES. So we're working very closely with our emergency service partners to get to all those requests. Since the event started, we've had over 900 requests for assistance, with 160 of them being since 6 p.m. last night. So it's been particularly busy last night. Most of the jobs that we're assisting with are fallen trees and leaking roofs and windows, and trying to help those community members with the tarpaulins on their roof and clearing the roads and removing the trees. So it has been mainly from Port Macquarie right up to the Tweed border, with the Tweed, Murwillumbah and Coffs areas, the busiest areas that we've had to respond to. I've seen some vision on the news of cars driving through floodwater. So again, I'd remind the community, please don't drive through the floodwaters. It's quite dangerous out there in bad conditions. If you don't have to travel on the roads, please don't, because it's quite possible that your path could get cut off, or you could get trapped between floodwaters, which is quite dangerous as well. We've had 4 flood rescues over this event, but nice to say that we've got everyone out safe and sound, and they've been rescued by our flood technicians. Also, children playing around playgrounds that are covered in water near drains is quite serious and can be quite dangerous as well. I've seen some of that vision on the TV. Please, make sure your children are safe. Don't get in the floodwaters, and don't think it's a nice new playground to go. This weather event has led to a large amount of flash flooding and river flooding, and as mentioned, with the high tides, it does mean that it's very difficult for the water to get away quickly, and the rain still continuing. We get a lot of water and runoff from the rivers from the Queensland event as well, so even if it does stop raining tomorrow afternoon, there's still a chance of flooding continuing for some period of time because the ground's quite wet and the water is having that difficulty getting away. So again, for tonight, we expect it will be very busy with the continuing heavy rains. We're unsure of where that rain is exactly going to fall, so I just want to make sure that people are protecting their homes, protecting themselves, making sure that they're ready for this weather event that will continue overnight and into tomorrow morning and off to tomorrow afternoon. We have been also assisting the community with sandbagging, so obviously there's a high demand for the sandbags. Again, try and get organised early, get to those SES sites that have the sandbagging and get those sandbags around your property, and make sure that if you do have any animals, we have had cause for some animal rescue during this event, that you're aware of where your animals are, that you get them ready, get them to higher ground, or bring your own pets inside, just to make sure they're nice and safe as well. So if the community can be prepared, and always be aware of what the Bureau of Meteorology are putting out on their website and in their messages. The same with the New South Wales State Emergency Service. We will message to the communities. We have additional volunteers have been brought from across the state to go into this Northern Rivers and Mid-North Coast area. There's about 170 volunteers at this moment out helping the community with, as I say, those fallen trees, leaking roofs, sandbagging and the other things that we're called upon to do. So we have a lot of resources up there. We will be regularly messaging and for people just to be aware of those warnings. So if we do issue an evacuation warning, that does mean get ready, be prepared and get ready to go. It is not at that stage an evacuation order, but there may be evacuation orders if the danger escalates. Thanks very much, and I'll hand over to Steve Pearce in relation to the surf conditions.
Thanks, Commissioner. Before we start, I just want to congratulate the Commissioner and her volunteers at the SES for doing a marvellous job so far in responding to what is a significant weather event up there in the North Coast. From a surf lifesaving perspective, with this particular weather event, we're seeing some of the largest coastal erosion that we've seen in many, many years, particularly around the Byron Bay area, which is completely changing the entire landscape of the beaches. From a surf lifesaving perspective, what that means for us is it changes the entire formation of the beaches and also starts to develop new permanent rips along beaches that not necessarily would have had those rips previously. We're very concerned that post this event, with the I guess the onslaught of visitation up there on the far north coast, with people wanting to really get out after the COVID summer of last year, people will be going to beaches where they think it has been safe previously, but there will be new rips. So our messages are for people to be really aware about rips and also swimming at patrolled locations where the red and yellow flags will be flying. Whilst this event is currently still on, we're putting in arrangements for some other logistical reasons in regards to able to get our craft out, both our IRBs and our jet skis, down onto the beaches, because currently with this large erosion, it's really inhibiting the access going forward. We saw one really tragic drowning on the weekend. We're really asking people to be aware of the conditions up there on the far north coast particularly. These are extremely treacherous conditions from a coastal management perspective, and we just ask you to think twice if you are entering the water, and please only enter that water at coastal locations where they are patrolled with the red and yellow flags.
I know you said 400 millimetres in some parts since the event started, but just in the past 24 hours, where have we seen the heaviest falls and how much has fallen?
Yeah, so we're starting to see the heaviest falls right now actually come back in again. So yesterday we saw some locations up near the border get around about 180 millimetres, but really focus is on right now. So for those who can access radar imagery, you can see there's a blob of really intense rainfall coming in now. We've been seeing rates, around 20 to 30 millimetres per hour, back to back for quite a few hours. And the expectation is today we could see, like quite a few locations could see more than 200 millimetres just today.
And the system, it was meant to be like the worst last night, but has that now changed? Like, are we now looking like tonight into tomorrow could be the worst?
Yeah, so Saturday into Sunday night, there was some really intense rainfall as well. And yes, we had expected it to really ramp up again last night. What happened was the system slowed down a little bit off the coast, and we're just starting to see that come in now. So certainly expecting a deterioration during the course of today, and it looks like it's already started and continuing overnight. So places that saw those really intense falls on Saturday night, there's some places that saw close to 300 millimetres in 24 hours, could see a repeat of that tonight, or between today and tonight.
And
Jane, Jessica Rich here from Channel 10. I hear what you're saying is that this weather at Byron isn't unheard of, but it is unusual to have this much rain at once. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, certainly that's a really good way of putting it. It's not unheard of, but it's unusual. We see these kinds of systems affect the New South Wales coast, 1 or 2 or 3 times a year. We saw a similar system affect that same area last February, which dropped similar amounts, maybe a little bit less. So we do see these kinds of systems, but they don't happen every month, be maybe once a year.
And when is the tide next expected to peak, and how will that compare in size to what we've seen this morning and overnight?
So along the far northern New South Wales coast today, we saw tides, the water levels around the high tide, around about 60 centimetres above what we would expect just from the tide alone. That was around 8:30 to 9 at around about the high tide this morning. So tomorrow, it shouldn't be as bad tomorrow, but certainly it'll be close to the usual high tide mark. So tomorrow's high tide is around about 9 o'clock in the morning. So that would be, we'd still be pretty concerned until we get through that time.
And the beaches a bit further down the coast, I mean, could they see what's happening in Byron? What's your expectation as you go down the coast?
Yeah, so the wave action, which is, that really powerful, some really powerful waves coming in. Those waves will batter, look like they'll batter the whole coast down to almost as far as Newcastle at similar heights. The signal tracks southwards. The good news for locations further south is it's missed the high tide of the day, so it shouldn't be as bad. But certainly there's locations up and down the New South Wales coast that are vulnerable to coastal erosion, and places like Old Bar near Taree, that they'd have to be a little bit concerned there'd be some erosion there.
The high tides have been described by some as abnormal. Is that accurate?
Yep, that's a term that we use in the Bureau when we're expecting water levels to exceed the usual high level mark. And yep, certainly these are very high tides because it's coinciding with this weather system. It's comparable, in fact, particularly as you move north of the border to just into southeast Queensland, comparable to what we've seen with a tropical cyclone.
Commissioner Culleen, can I just ask you a question there? Sorry, I can't hear if somebody else is asking a question.
No, that's okay.
So if they are feel free to interject. You mentioned how many calls you've had for help. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the sorts of flood rescues that you've carried out? Predominantly fallen trees, is that correct? Has anyone been stranded in cars or that sort of thing?
Yeah, we've had 4 flood rescues. That means we've had to go in with our flood technicians and save some people. One was a woman who had driven or been caught in floodwaters and had got out of her car and was swept away, so we rescued her. I'm not sure of the details of the other ones, but all up in that area where those heavy rains are. And again, it's not always intentionally driving through floodwaters. Sometimes it's getting caught between floodwaters. But if people can just stay off those roads and be aware of where they're heading and have a plan to take another direction if something is blocked. The other jobs were a lot of trees down. Obviously, as the heavy rains fall and the ground gets softer, it is more dangerous for the trees to be able to fall over and be pushed over, particularly with these high winds. So anytime we get the high winds, we see that the demand for the SES to assist escalates. And again, the reminder not to park under trees, ensure that the trees around your home are safe, and call the SES on 132 500 if you need assistance, and 000 if it's life-threatening.
Are you able to talk at all to the sandbagging efforts in Byron? What's your intel on whether they've been good enough to hold back some of that erosion and protect areas of that coast?
So I haven't got the details about the sandbagging in Byron. Certainly I've seen the images on the TV where they've put a number of, the council have put a number of sandbags and tried to shore up that land, but when you look at that vision, it's certainly making small cliffs of the land and washing away some of the walkways, so it's quite dangerous. So, but the SES have volunteers and equipment to help with their sandbags, and particularly the council, they have the facilities as well, but individual residents can get those sandbags and assist their properties to remain safe. But the weather and the strong surf that is coming in at the moment is quite dangerous in those areas, and particularly at Byron it seems to have been the hardest hit of any of the coast, and washing away the beach. Okay, no more questions?
I've got a question for Stephen Pearce, if I may.
All right, Jess, I'll put him on.
Last question,
Thank you very much. Stephen, just in relation to that tragic drowning that you spoke to earlier, a father lost his life trying to save his son. Sadly, we know that they were swimming on an unpatrolled stretch of coast. What's your message to people ahead of summer on that front?
Look, it's a great point. We're really stressing for people coming into summer that it's so important that this summer, the New South Wales coastline will be the destination of choice both for local communities and visitors. So important that you come to a patrolled location. That's anywhere where we have either our lifeguards on duty or our lifesavers on duty, and that can just be denoted just by the red and yellow flags. And tragically, this weekend our lifeguarding services actually start on that beach. So it's been a really tragic weekend, with the loss of this father trying to save his son. But again, our message is swim at a patrolled location. If you do see someone in trouble, please ring 000 in the first instance, or bring that to the attention of the lifeguards or lifesavers, and only try and effect a rescue if you're really confident and competent with your own ability.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Always a pleasure. Good to see you. Go back. So,